From time to time, so I'm not sure.
Something like that.
Pardon?
Like a low figure assessment per month, $10, $20, $30.
Well, the Marshall project over there in Tomales Bay, that was done with. They did get a grant for half of the construction cost.
Mm-hmm.
And it ends up being that they have the assessments to pay back the capital, but they also have an assessment to pay for the annual operation and maintenance. So they are paying, I think, something closer to $200 or $150 maybe dollars a month.
It's very reasonable.
Something like that, 150 to 200. So.
Yeah, we have Karen McBride of the rural.
Community system.
Yes, who is helping us look at grants. So we're trying to arrange a meeting for her to come back to the community. But she's an important component in this, so she's going to go look for money, any money.
Yeah.
Since you did your septic 20 years ago, did you see more people look at this area to move into because you had a solution? And how much did your house value change?
Yeah, I think
that's really hard to quantify.
Okay.
There definitely was more interest in the area because of the fact that we were on a formal, septic system. But it's really hard to quantify. In comparing it to what the whole general economy was increasing and that type of thing, but it definitely improved, the community's real estate.
So are there lots that people are buying to build, or are they just building onto their existing houses?
We've only had a couple new construction projects come in. We've got one that's currently underway. And so we will just work with that person to make sure that they've got the tanks available for their project. And also the whole system was built with only about 25% utilization. And so we've got quite a bit of additional capacity, but I don't think we are even close to having enough lots in the community to even get halfway.
Yeah. Some of the, besides the septic system constraints for building, you have things like slopes. Mm-hmm. You can see this is some steep land in this canyon here, which is similar to parts of Sonora.
Do people worry about growth?
No, because this is a kind of confined canyon, and so there's not a lot of lots that are available that would allow you to build on. And so I would say we've only got like 7 lots that are capable of building. And so I don't think there's really any concern about overgrowth.
What is the lot size that's buildable, that you folks, at least here?
Well, I think currently the county requires an acre.
Oh, well, that eliminates KWA. There's no acreage there, just feet.
But we're kind of a unique situation because we're in a confined area.
Yeah.
And the whole Santa Cruz Mountain areas, they have requirements on the size of lot that you need to have in order to build. But that's a county requirement, and you guys are in a different county, so they may have different.
What about very large houses? Like if you have a small lot and your neighbor puts in a huge house, is there any worry, or has that happened here?
No, we really haven't been concerned about it.
We can only add 500 square feet on your existing structure. You can only add 500 square feet.
Ever?
Yeah.
County limits?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
That's good.
Did you say that your filter lot, your 20-acre lot, is steep? very steep?
No,
Flat?
it's fairly, it's just a,
Like under 10 degrees?
yeah, it's
And
a
so
real
your
mild
acre and a
slope.
half is really an acre and a half
Yeah,
field.
yeah. And if you decide that you want to see it, you'll just see,
A field.
you won't be able to determine that there's anything under it, but.
And is that accessible like a trail access between those two parks? Or is it closed off?
No, that's the lot that we traded.
Oh,
So the one that has the leach field on it was was some farmland or something. It was
Part of a ranch. I
it
think.
was
Yeah.
it was a piece of property that the county inherited.
is it grazed?
No, we currently frown upon animals grazing on our leach field because of
What's
the
the purpose?
metrics that we take on the leach field lands.
The Marshall field there
Yeah.
was installed with traffic rated boxes at the valve ends, the valve boxes, the lateral ends, and so forth, and then fenced with livestock grade fencing.
Yeah.
And it was part of the Marin Agricultural Land Trust that negotiated it, and so it's available for grazing.
Sheep or cattle?
Both,
Both.
yeah.
So that was a little similar. But it was a private ranch, and about a 6-acre area was found to be suitable. The owners were, they had a home in the community. They also owned the ranch, and so they worked out a deal with the county.
Totally different soil
Sold-
types, I would assume.
Pardon?
Totally different soil types.
Compare from there to here, or
Yeah.
So it's the hills alongside Tamales Bay, and the homes are right on
Mostly
the water.
sand
Yeah.
and
No, it's a rock. It was
It's
a
rocky.
rock, kind of a big rocky knoll. And so we go, it's not easy to find soils, and we look around, and in this case it was weathered, big kind of west-facing weathered sandstone.
Well, I notice here you got a lot of chert used for decoration, which has to come from right here. So you must have sandstone and
That's
chert bed.
probably an alluvial. The one that's here, it's this nice kind of where a couple of drainages long ago, probably. Maybe it's a really old landslide, but it was
Yeah.
a primo kind of hay field. So I think it's really gravelly.
Good
so
soil.
it's really performing well, your guys' field. So gravelly, pretty gravelly, sandy loams.
Real absorbent.
Really. And that,
Abandoned with the county and the normal practice, and then the project puts in a new facility. That's
Did
when
all the
this was done.
homeowners put in new tanks?
Well, this project funded, the state funded the new tank and pump, whatever was, because that's considered part of the treatment system. It starts really right at the septic tank, and so the state rules on that were that they would, if it was part of the treatment process, it would be paid for by the grant. Okay, even though it went on a private property. And then the district, of course, they inspect and maintain those, but I think the cost for the individual pump out is the private property owners, right? Is that, or how
No,
are you doing
we
that? You cover
we cover that.
Okay.
If there are some residents that cover the electric consumption
Oh, right.
for the tank, unless it's a tank that's shared by two
right,
residences.
right.
So there are some properties that have tanks that are shared by two houses.
Yeah, just a couple of those, but
Yeah.
for the
But
most
most
part.
of them,
Yeah.
the objective is to get everybody on their own tank.
And are your
And that was gonna be, okay, for example, I know Gabe has a very nice tank and, really bigger than what his house is warranted for our needs. So they would come in and say, okay, that's not part of our system, but we're gonna have to replace that tank and put in something.
No, well, no, I think, and I don't recall if all of the tanks had to be replaced. If the if the tank is new, or it meets, it's adequate, meets standards, and doesn't leak, is not corroded or whatever, there's no reason you can't keep an existing tank. The project doesn't say automatically take out everything that's there. So, and the other projects we've done, and there's one out in Tomales Bay area, Marshall. That's that's something that Matt, he didn't work on this project, but in Marshall, he went through every tank, and we determined which ones, how they were built, whether they were manufactured, or they were home built, or how big they were, and their condition. Would they be suitable to continue? And where they weren't, the project paid for replacement. Where they were adequate, there's no reason to.
Because like the original septic system on my parents' house and my house was like 255-gallon drums.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the type of situation. Yeah, you wouldn't.
And that's
That would be put in. Yeah. So if it was a project like this, that a new tank would be put in on your property. But there might be someone who put in a new tank, not too long ago, and there's no reason to change that.
Yeah, Norm, that's what he was talking about. I have 1,900 gallon. It's a cement, two holes for it, and the house is only under 1,000 square feet. The cabin, one bedroom, so it's overkill. But it's all cement.
In some cases, there were tanks that were in really good conditions, but then the risers needed to be rehabbed. So there were tanks that were buried.
Yeah, mine is 3 feet under, and I did
essentially new tanks, from the late '80s, the '90s.
Right.
So we had a cost section for rehabbing, which is making a waterproof connection to a riser and then a waterproof lid.
Because it's important that it all be accessible for inspection. For the routine inspection, the pump out, and especially if they have a pump in there, you have to be able to immediately get to that.
Okay, so just for example, my parents' house, it's a cement tank, but there's no access except through the
openings.
There's an access.
Yeah. So that would be a type, maybe a type 1 is a full new tank. Type, 1A or type is keep the tank but retrofit with risers, or maybe it needs some watertight sealing around the lid, or some grouting at the inlet and outlet. But otherwise, if the tank is inspected and found to be structurally adequate, sound, and proper size, and in an appropriate location, leave it and just retrofit it. So that would be a variation of keeping and rehabbing.
Sir?
I got interrupted. Like, I was wondering if there's differential assessment for numbers of bedrooms or bathrooms or whatever gallonage produced.
We've got an ordinance that kind of gives us some guidelines as to, how many bedrooms that you can have in a house that's supported by a certain tank size. Most all the tanks in this community have 1,500 gallon tanks.
So you don't count gallons?
So no,
It's the same
more
assessment.
it's more associated with the size of the house.
Okay, so the larger house you have, the more you're liable for assessment? I think
No,
that was the
no, the assessment is the same for
same, okay.
yeah. But if you go ahead.
How many gray water systems do you have?
I don't think they have any separate gray water. So everything is hooked up.
Yeah.
So there were, before the project, there were people that had a septic tank and also a separate gray water system. But the putting of the project in required all the plumbing to be brought to the new system, to the community system.
Doesn't the state now require that all agencies provide standards for gray water systems?
Well, there are standards now. Remember, this was done 20 years ago, and there was a gray water code dating back to the 1980s, but it basically said you need the same thing as a septic system. You can separate the gray water, but it still has to meet all the same requirements. So there was no mandate to do anything different, and there was really no reason in this community to do anything except collect it all together.
Do any of the systems you're aware of, do they basically have metering? And so that there is a relationship in terms of how much, so if someone uses 5 times as much going into the system as someone else, it seems a simple metering system would differentiate.
Right. There wasn't here. And it's, yeah, I'd say it's, that question does come up, and in the Marshall project we went through this whole question of should we have different assessments for a different number of bedrooms because they're going to demand more out of the, they're going to have more flow. Theoretically, they're going to have more flow.
So,
and by the time we got through looking at all the ways to do it and credit for existing tanks, it was, everyone said, we think we should just all be in the same, be treated the same regardless of what we have. Some people use it on weekends, even though we've got more bedrooms. Some people, so in the end, at least in the Marshall community, and the same thing here, they didn't feel a need to get to that level of slicing and dicing all of the connections and the fees, but uniform fee across the board.
Are there any commercial hookups?
In here, there's no commercial.
Do most houses have their septic tank and leach fields on private property or public property? And how far away are the leach fields to the creek here?
Oh, in here?
Yeah.
Okay. So this one, it's a community leach field. So there are no leach fields left in
Who owns the land
Lakehead.
that the leach field is on?
So it's the park.
It's a
Can-
shared leach field that what we did is we did a property exchange with the county, and we gave them a 20-acre piece of property, and they let us use, they let us use a 20-acre property, and we let them use a 20-acre property we have. And
But
that's,
who had the property? Who owned the property?
we own the property.
We
The
mean
homeowners association?
We owned
homeowners?
we owned a 20-acre piece of property that the county wanted access to, and the county owned a 20-acre piece of property that we wanted to use as a leach field.
Okay,
So
that
we did a
So-
trade.
fortuitous
So
that was.
The leach field is about it's about a half a mile.
Okay.
This is, we're standing on the lift station.
Okay.
So the septic tanks of the individual properties drain the effluent here, and then it goes to the leach field by way of a pressure line that goes across this bridge, through the woods, up, and then onto county property on a road that leads up to what was maybe a pasture area.